Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. An unusual court case in Mexico apparently reached its conclusion last week when former Congressman Rodrigo Ivan Cortes was convicted of gender-based political violence. This was because of social media posts made by Cortes, which referred to transgender-identifying Mexican congressional representative Salma Luevano as a man, quote, man who self-ascribes as a woman. Now, last Wednesday, Mexico's highest court for electoral issues upheld the lower court's guilty verdict. Cortes must pay a fine and publish the court ruling and an apology drafted by the court on Twitter and Facebook daily for 30 days. So to discuss this, I'm joined by lawyer Germán Saucedo and writer Laura Lecuona. Thank you both for joining me very much. Germán, I'm going to come to you first about this. This is a very scary case when it comes to the idea of freedom of speech. And I think a lot of people assume that Mexico hasn't been infected by the culture wars in the way that we have over here. Are we wrong?
Well, yes, we can see right now.
You are very, very infected by them.
Sorry, I can come to either first, but Germán, can I come to you first?
Yeah, sure. As we can see, this case is radical, not only in that it punishes free speech, it makes compelled speech part of the punishment. And we can see that this global ideological infection is not only part of the United States and of Britain, it's also part of Mexico and many other countries. So people tend to think of Mexico and other Latin American countries, or maybe some Asian countries, as exempt from this ideological virus. But that's not true at all. The culture war is raging not only in the United States and in Great Britain and in Europe, it's raging in the entire world. It has consequences around the entire world. So, well, as we can see, it's gonna trickle down to the rest of the world.
Laura, I want to bring you in because you've had direct experience of this with your book, which was called When Trans is Not Transgressive. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I was invited by an established publisher house, Siglo XXI, which is a very, very renowned publisher, to write this book because the editor saw that this was an important subject to discuss at society level. So I wrote it, and it was going to be presented in the largest book fair in Latin America, which is the Guadalajara Book Fair. But trans activists, as they do, started harassing the fair. And long story short, my book wasn't presented, but it wasn't even published by Siglo XXI because some trans activists didn't want it to. So I self-published, and I can say it will be published in English in November by Spin-Off Express, a radical feminist publisher. But yes, and I have been constantly silenced. Well, they tried to silence me, but I don't allow myself to be silenced since 2017.
Right.
And yes.
So we have this situation. Your book's cancelled. It's not, so it is going on. And specifically around this issue of gender identity, this sort of silencing of any kind of debate around it. Germán, can I ask you, you made a point about compelled speech. And in this particular case with Cortes, the fact that he has to publish an apology which was composed by the court, that is compelled speech, isn't it?
Yes, of course it's compelled speech. And the thing is, they have no legal basis to compel this speech. But of course, who gets to decide what laws apply and what laws don't apply in each moment? Well, the courts do. In this court that has been radically taken over by the gender ideologues and is not willing to have a conversation with anybody who disagrees with them. So they can do basically whatever they want. There's been a lot of discussion as to whether the legality of this punishment is correct or not. Well, in the end, you can throw articles all around, but in the end, who cares? Who cares if it's permitted legally? Because the people who have the power are just going to do whatever they want through the power of the court. So here we go.
And we're talking very specifically here about someone who misgendered someone. It's not about someone perpetuating harassment or abuse or anything like that. It's very specifically about someone recognizing biological sex rather than gender identity. Am I right?
Yes, of course. And, well, of course, the Mexican Constitution is supposed to protect free speech. In the Article 6 of the Constitution, that would be like our First Amendment, so to say. And it protects free speech except in the cases where it interferes with human dignity. The thing is, who gets to interpret the law and decide what interferes and what damages human dignity? Well, the courts do. So if the courts decide that misgendering somebody is an act that defies the dignity of this transgender person, well, they can get to decide a fitting punishment for them.
So, Laura, what can people do about this? Because it's particularly disturbing, I think, when it starts being politicians criminalised for effectively expressing an opinion. And if politicians are criminalised for that opinion, what kind of message does that send to the general public about what is permitted and what isn't?
Exactly. That's what worries me. And let me mention another case related to this one, that of Teresa Castell, who is currently a congresswoman, and she was also accused by this same man, Salma Luébano, of gender-based political violence because she referred to him as a trans person, a biological man. That's what she said, and the courts sustained that was gender-based violence, and now she is equally registered in this national register as Rodrigo Iván Cortés. And this is a woman being condemned of committing supposedly gender-based political violence for referring to a man as a man.
So this isn't the first time this has happened. This is not new.
These are very recent cases, both of them. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But yes, what is the message? They are trying to. The message is, if you're a woman and you want to refer to a man as what he is, beware, because we can condemn you. And yeah, that's
absolutely.
The message.
So from a legal perspective, Herman, what can people do about this? Now that this precedent appears to have been established legally, it's not going to be easy, is it, to fight back for free speech?
No, it's not, because the people in power do not care about having a conversation with people they disagree with. And this goes for everybody across the political spectrum, be they conservatives, be they liberals, be they feminists, be they Catholics, whatever. The courts are basically telling us, warning us, do not step over the line. So I think this is a very important place for two things. First of all, for people of different political persuasions to come together and to fight against this together, even though we may not agree on the specifics. And secondly, we have to realize, conservatives and liberals alike, that the state is antagonistic towards free speech. So once we know that, and once we know that we are not dealing with people that are playing in good faith, then we can make decisions according to that. Because as you can see in this whole debacle, the thing that is going on is that, we're going to appeal to a higher court, and we're going to appeal to then a higher court. There are no longer any higher courts to appeal to. Nobody is going to impart justice. So once you realize that, you can act and make plans accordingly.
Laura, do you share that view that actually this is a pretty dispiriting situation, and when the high courts themselves are captured, there's nowhere left to go?
Yeah. There's a little despair, but anyway, we should keep fighting against this, because even though we won't win in the short term, what can we do if not keep fighting against this? And yes, there are several signs that the courts are captured by transgenderism, and it is very worrying, because some activists, some transgender activists, are telling the society at large that we have to believe in gender identity. They are enforcing a belief in us. And the court is doing, also they are dictating what the court says, what the court decides, what we have to believe, who is right, who is wrong. It is very worrying.
So not just compelled speech, but compelled belief. Very disturbing. Herman Saucedo and Laura La Corona, thank you so much both for joining me tonight.